Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Smart Trucking Live. Glad you could join us. Hello there, Dwight McQueen in Indiana. Dwight, I hear what you're saying, and I couldn't agree more. Thanks for joining us. Ted Lane. Hello, Ted. Daniel Meredith. Glad to see you here. Adam Bennett, thank you for joining us. Kelly Patterson from Bismarck, North Dakota. I bet you it's a little cool and refreshing up there. Trucker Hershey near Pittsburgh. 59 degrees and sunny. Working on his tan. I'm a little envious about that. Glad to see you here for the whole show. Tank Johnson, thank you for joining us. Monster Zero, appreciate it. Grilled Mortal is here, and you can tell he's an Ontario boy when he talks about the Hagerstown tire fire. That was quite the deal up here anyway. Josh Peterbilt, 389. How are you, Josh? Good to have you join us. Joe S. Hello, Joe. Trucker Hershey. About being in the hair and makeup, they told me today they're giving up. They can't fix ugly, so I won't be losing any more time in that department. I'll just be throwing on my ball cap and coming straight in. So no more time on the makeup and the hair. Doc Dewey, howdy from Wyoming. Glad to see you, Doc. Joe, how are you doing? Appreciate it. Lee Harvey, Christopher Van Dyke, Tango Tracker, Eddie Drotar. Glad to see you there. RM, Cash Johnson, Roger Zing, Fred Besmer's here. Hey, Fred. Glad to see you or hear from you. Sarah, Oklahoma. Kind of on the way between here and there, Fred. On your way home, I imagine. Thanks for popping in. Tim Field. Thank you, Tim, for joining us. James Stemler. Good afternoon to you, sir. Frederick Cole. Paul Hudson from Illinois. Thanks for joining us, Paul. Captain Nice Guy. Glad to see you here, sir. Digging myself out of the driveway today. I wear shorts outside. Must be nice. But and before I forget, I forget who made the comment now about now that you're in your four-wheeler, do you ever find yourself accidentally kind of trying to pull into a scale or something like that? I've done that. And when I first kind of semi-retired, Kathy used to get after me because I would swing wide in the car on all the corners like I was still driving the truck. Apparently I still do it. So some habits die hard. Before we get rolling on the E.P.A. thing today, I want to mention that next week's video, or this Friday's video rather, is on 5 sticky situations you'll find yourself in at some point, how to get out of them. We're working on getting the Lettuce King away from his little flatbedding gig and come up and do an interview with us, or maybe do a Skype interview and use that for an upcoming video. We're looking forward to that. He's always a laugh on wheels. And the only other thing, there's always stuff going on, but I caught an article today in Overdrive magazine, and I'm gonna expand on it at a later date in a video or something like that. But the gist of it is that the FMCSA is now granting teams with no CDLs the right to run trucks on the interstate. So I'm just about apoplectic over that, but I'm going to calm down and we'll do a video on that at a later point. But I just can hardly believe it. Anyway, back to today's topic. The EPA, under the new Biden administration, is announcing that they're going to step up their enforcement against guys doing deletes on their trucks. Now, every state has their own little version of CARB. California has CARB, of course, and CARB's probably been the most vigorous in following the Clean Air Act, which is a law, an American law, which they are entitled to enforce. But a lot of the states haven't really been too excited about it, except for California. Well, now the EPA is going to push more and more states to patrol guys that are working around their emission systems and doing deletes and that type of thing. And I was thinking, I'm sure it's the new administration that's brought that on. And maybe they've just noticed there aren't enough trucks breaking down on the roads anymore lately, so they must be deleting the emission systems. maybe that's what's brought it on. But it's funny how things work, and it's just amazing the different reactions. Every action has a reaction. So let's talk about the EPA stepping up this enforcement. So now you'll have
let's hang on here a second before we do that. Daniel Merida, thank you for the 2, by the way. I don't know if we caught the last comment from you, Daniel, but that was me, and no, not really sure what that's in direct reference from. Did you catch the last comment from him there, Dave?
Yes. He's referring to I believe, to whether
yeah, as long as you understand it.
Yeah, I do.
Explanation, but
yes,
thanks for the 2, Daniel.
Thanks, Daniel. Appreciate it. So what was I going on about there?
Nobody knows.
Yes. So every action has a reaction. So with this EPA now clamping down on these go around, work around systems that a lot of guys had to do just to survive, just to keep their trucks running. There are entire fleets out there that have done deletes on all their trucks just so their trucks don't break down. So the big carriers are looking at this now, at this new increased enforcement, and they're thinking, well, how are we going to get around this? And what they're doing is promoting lease operators within their companies. So they want to step away from company trucks, their own company trucks, because they have to repair their own company trucks and keep their own company trucks running. So many of these big fleets now have decided they're just going to brush all these problems off onto their lease operator fleet. And all these issues, all these problems, everything involved with these emission systems trucks are going to be the problem of the lease operator. And it'll break thousands of guys, because some of those systems are so intensively expensive to fix that it'll put guys under. But the fleets don't care. The fleets just don't want to spend money. They just want to make money. So they're getting away from company trucks and brushing off the expense of operating a truck onto new lease operators that just don't realize what they're getting into. And that's dirty pool as far as I'm concerned. But that's the route that a lot of these mega fleets now are going to go, because they don't want to have the cost and the worry and the expense of these emissions trucks that just don't run properly. And they're all holding out for these electric trucks, but those are still years down the road. And so we've got to deal with these emission-friendly trucks that don't run properly. And we're looking at years and years of having to put up with these trucks. And these carriers are saying, you know what? We don't want any part of that. We just want to run the trucks, control the trucks, move the freight and make money. We don't want to be involved in the repairs or anything like that. So we're going to promote lease operating and sell off or lease off as many of these trucks as we possibly can to keep our fleets moving. And it is not uncommon for these big fleets, these mega fleets, to repossess or release one truck 3 or 4 different times, because the first guy will go under and he'll return the truck. So then the company, the carrier, will fix that truck at the expense of the first lease operator. They'll take it right out of his final check to repair the truck. Then they'll jack up the price and release to the truck to a second new driver, and just keep going like that. And many of these mega carriers will lease the same truck 3 and 4 times in a row. They're making more money on leasing than they are on hauling freight.
Don't really take a breath in there, do you?
Oh,
Michael Mueller, just heading out for the afternoon. All right, have a good afternoon, my friend, if you're still listening. Kenneth Snyder, thank you very much for the 20, my friend. Hope you're enjoying the stream thus far. And Bradley with another 50 bomb. This is like a weekly ritual for you now, Bradley. We really appreciate it, especially with such with healthy donations like that. It really means a lot to us. We're glad you enjoy the content on our channel that much. And Daniel, once again, coming in with another donation of $10. Thank you very much for that, Daniel. I realized just how much of an a-hole I was driving a regular four-wheeler until I went behind the wheel of a semi, showing much more respect and how much more attention I pay to the road. Thank you, everyone who donated.
Yes, thank you, Daniel, and thank you, Bradley, and thank you, Kenneth. We really appreciate it. Helps us out a whole lot.
I swear that's what I just said.
Well, I'm just thanking them from my end as well.
Any comments on what Daniel said?
Yeah, you know what, Daniel? It's funny how driving a truck professionally at work turns you into a better driver when you get off work, and that's true because you become more aware of everything around you, and it does improve your driving skills all the way around. It's interesting that you notice that. It's a good thing. It's a good thing. So back to the EPA. So this is how the big carriers are handling this step up of the emissions enforcement. We all know that they've gotten rid of glider kits now. You can't buy a glider kit from the factory anymore. So they plugged that loophole, and now they're plugging the loophole where guys have done these deletes, and more states are going to start checking trucks and pulling trucks in and pulling trucks over. So in an article that's you wouldn't think is related to the announcement that the EPA has made, and it comes the same week, it turns out that the U.S. Coast Guard is concerned with the San Pedro Bay anchorage. And their worry is that there are over 60 megaton ships anchored there waiting to unload their containers in the ports of Long Beach and Los Angeles. Why are they anchored out there? And look like they'll be anchored out there for some time, and the traffic just keeps coming in, the boat traffic, ship traffic, just keeps coming into San Pedro Bay. None of these guys can get unloaded. Why can't they get unloaded? Because the ports are full. The land ports where they offload the ships, all their acreages and properties are full. Why are they full? Why aren't the containers being shipped out? Because California, one of the reasons is California, hard on the carb bandwagon and not to allow just any truck into California. There are thousands of guys, thousands and tens of thousands of trucks now that will not go into California to haul freight because they just don't need the headaches from CARB and the fines and stuff. So all of a sudden, truck traffic from out of state into California has dropped way off, and they can't get their guys to haul containers because the trucks won't come in and pick them up because they're afraid of the EPA. And it's created a huge backlog in these ports on the West Coast in California. Other ports in other parts of the country are not experiencing these backlog problems. But it's almost like the left hand of government doesn't know about what the right hand is doing. So here's the EPA clamping down on emissions, and yet the emissions are affecting the truck traffic, and now they're just starting to clue in as to, wow, that might be a problem. And it was interesting to note in California this past season, produce moved at a higher rate out of California than it ever has. The rates were fantastic, even past prime season. And the reason for that was they were trying to attract trucks to come into California and pick up the produce because they were having trouble getting trucks. Because the EPA is forcing so many guys like me not to go into California, thousands of guys. And it's just, it's the left hand not knowing what the right hand is doing. So the ports are after the big mega carriers that have the contracts to go in there. The ports are after the guys like Knight and Swift to buy more trucks to come pick up the containers. But guys like Swift Knight are going, well, we don't really want to buy any more trucks because we know they're not working properly. We're working our best to get, lease operators to come in, but it's just not happening quick enough. So the freight is backing up. And if anyone had taken the time to look at this situation and step back a year, 2 years, 3 years ago, and figured out how this was going to affect everything, I'm sure they would have taken a different path. But it just amazes to me that the government can't see a reaction and then be surprised when there's a reaction. So here's the reaction. They're desperate for the freight to get flowing after COVID, and yet they've stifled the freight with their EPA mandates and this Clean Air Act.
Daniel, thank you so much for another donation there, my friend. $5 coming in hot. Got to go. I have to take my fiance out for dinner. Wow, hope you guys enjoy that. Dave, be sure to take out Kathy later. Yeah, I saw that. All you drivers, be safe out there. Thank you very much for the 5, Daniel, and don't cross your fingers for the dinner between my parents there. Don't hold your breath, anyways.
Wow, Daniel.
Unless it's McDonald's, in which case that's probably within reach. But
all the restaurants are closed here because of this COVID thing.
That is his go-to excuse. Yeah.
I can't take her out if I wanted to, and I said to her the other night that I wish we could go out for dinner, but they're just not allowing us yet.
And when you don't have any money to spend, it makes it difficult.
That's why the donations help. But thank you, Daniel, appreciate it. Here's a good question from Roger saying, can you still run a 73 Pete 352 with a 350 Cummins on U.S. highways? The answer is in some states. And I can't tell you now off the top of your head. You've got to avoid California. I would avoid most of the West Coast. In the Midwest, you're still all right with a rig like that, a setup like that. But even states like New Jersey now are starting to clamp down on emissions, which, go figure, New Jersey, you could cut the air with a knife in there. So maybe that's why they're doing it. But yeah, in the Midwest, you're still okay. But, we'll see now how states like Nebraska and Wyoming, Kansas react to this new EPA mandate and how hard they take it and how hard they enforce it. But, it'll put a lot of guys out. It'll put a lot of guys out because not everybody is willing to get into this industry by investing in a $200,000 truck that doesn't run properly. Like, I don't know very many people that can afford to do that. The fleets, the big fleets, the mega fleets, how they manage that is just to buy extra trucks, spare trucks. So when one goes down, they just tow another one out and bring the broken one home. But the average truck driver certainly cannot afford to do that. So it's going to, eventually, it'll weed thousands of guys out of trucking. Or the answer is for us then to be strictly company drivers, because you sure don't want to be a lease operator, for instance, and get a bill for repairing your DEF system for $10,000. Yeah, James Spafford says California and New Jersey require particulate filters now, and that's apparently that's going to be increasingly common in other states here within the year. Igor's here. Hey, Igor, I just saw you roll by. Thanks for joining us. Igor, trucking in the bush in Brazil.
If someone in chat just wants to verify for me the volume levels, we're having mixed reviews so far. Most people are saying that it's fine, but there are still a few people who are saying that it's too quiet. So just let us know, chat, if you can hear everything just fine from both ends here. Anywho, Vaping Jack coming in with a $10 donation. Thank you very much for that. I run containers to rail yards, and every single one I deliver to the rail yard goes to California. Containers out of rail yards is booming since ports are backed up. I run out of North Carolina. Yeah.
There's tons of container work. The trick with container work is to find the stuff that pays well. And it's like, look at Houston, the Port of Houston, for instance. A lot of container work there. But most of that work seems to be controlled by load brokers. And you remember the trucker strikes in Houston last year. That was what that was all about. The brokers had just squeezed their trucks so tight that the guys weren't making any money, and they were just bowing out about it. But there's container shipping is going to become a big deal. The trick is going to be finding the money in it and making sure it's not controlled by people that cheap out. I wouldn't run anything older than a 10-year-old truck here in California. CARB is getting restrictive here. Trucker Harold. I think now Trucker Harold, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I think the oldest truck you can have in California now is a 2010 without getting into trouble. I believe that's where the bar is right now. Here's Captain Nice Guy, who says he can hear me just fine. Appreciate it. Don't see it, read it to me. Hey, there's SoCal Sandman. Another reason I left California after living there for 22 years. Yeah, the E.P.A. Hey, SoCal Sandman. Hope you're doing well. Hope you're feeling well. I still haven't found the comment that you're looking... funny how California doesn't allow trucks with older engines in, yet the air quality hasn't changed. Tim Field, good shot. Exactly right. And I've even been told that now they patrol emissions out of the great big ocean-going ships and stuff like that. But it's the cars. There's more cars there than any other state in the union, like twice as many as any other state in the union. It's the cars. But they don't want to do anything about the cars because the public will revolt. But that's where the pollution, it's just typical government, you know. Don't fix the problem. Fix something else and try to make it look like the problem. Oh, man. Volumes are good, says Scott. Good. Trucker Harold, I run containers out of ports in L.A. and LB. I've been pulling my hair out every day being overworked. Still, he's making $100,000 a year. But that's pretty serious money. But yeah, Trucker Harold, you'll be busy for the foreseeable future because, well, you know the story as well as I do. And they were showing footage, the U.S. Coast Guard was showing footage of that San Pedro Bay, and it looks like a parking lot for ocean-going container ships. It's unreal. I bought my truck in California and can't even go there anymore without special permits. That's SoCal Sandman. Yeah, it's I don't know. It's a crazy world anymore. And it's hurting the whole country economically. And I'm a green guy. I live up here and I love the lakes and the forests and the trees, and I'm anti-pollution, absolutely. But you've got to be practical to a certain extent about it. Like look at Texas. Banked on the wind farms, and then in an ice storm they lost all their power. You've got to have some common sense practical application to all of these things if we're going to go green, and I agree with it if we can do it practically, but practical and common sense hasn't been part of the formula to date. So, and now it's catching up with them, and that's why the ports are packed. California continued to elect idiots to the state legislature and the governor's mansion. You get idiocy. Yeah, that's about the way of it. Bonanza Transport, do you remember when they changed the fuel standard and every fuel pump in America was destroyed or rebuilt? Yes, I do, because I was swapping fuel filters. I used to change my filters every 12,000 miles, and you know, if I felt it was getting a little bit of restriction, I'd swap it at once in between. When I retired there with this new green biofuel, I was swapping fuel filters, and I use cat fuel filters, and I was swapping both fuel filters at a cost of $80 each time, 2 and 3 times a month, every month, because my truck wasn't designed to run on corn syrup and soy meal. It's unbelievable, and there are no standards. Like, different states have different measures of what they consider to be acceptable fuel. And I remember fueling up in Minnesota a couple of times, for instance, in the cold weather, the truck gelling within a couple 100 miles. I certainly remember those days. I don't know if it's any better anymore. They used to call it Jello fuel.
Alexandra with the $5. Thank you very much for that. Honestly, I'm unconvinced right now that I should even stay in the trucking industry. I'm thinking about going back to school to get ASE certified.
Alexander, thank you for the $5. I'm not sure what ASE is exactly, but trucking's becoming a tough arena to work in. And if you're going to work in it, you've got to seek out like a top company driving job where you don't absorb any of the costs of running the truck. But it never hurts to stay in school. You can always go trucking. So just something to kick around. Captain Nice Guy. It says Jeff Thompson, he's got some oceanfront property in Kansas to sell. Yeah, California guys are going on about California here now and about car, but California is a funny state. Like I worked in there a lot. Like I ran California steady, and I really liked California, but they seem to be on the cusp of inventing stupid rules. They seem to be at the forefront of that all the time, and it's coming back to haunt them. Yeah, controlled chaos is exactly practical is key common sense. Isn't in politics or even really at all anymore. It's common sense is becoming hard to find. It's true. The wind farms in Texas and the rest of the power grid want winterized wind turbines. They work fine in Michigan and Indiana because they were winterized properly. So Michael Mueller, maybe that's the problem. They dropped the ball and they weren't maintaining their equipment. Texas is a funny state too, because they've got all that money. They're one of the richest states in the country, and yet they won't spend money on snow removal and taking care of the highways when they get icy. Like, look at that huge pileup in Dallas-Fort Worth, north of Dallas-Fort Worth there last week. Incredible, but they just kind of wait for God to melt the ice out there. I've been stuck in Amarillo, for instance, a couple times for a couple of days waiting for the highways to thaw out, just because Texas won't spend the money on salters and sanders and plows and stuff like that. Maybe this will change their minds. I read about people in Texas having to sleep in their cars because they'd lost all their heat in their houses. That's third world country stuff, except they don't have cars. But man, America's got to have a look at that, and Texas got to fix that. That can't happen again. Texas or any other state south doesn't have the building standards the north has, and that's controlled chaos saying that, and maybe that's part of the problem. Maybe that's a big part of the problem.
Daniel Meredith coming in again with the $2. Thank you very much for that. I was with Swift and now YRC/Yellow. Don't give up.
Appreciate it, Daniel. Daniel, I noticed that Yellow is now advertising for another 1,500 drivers. So they see positive things in the future here. I read that this week, so that was nice to see.
Jamie Godman, good to see you in the chat this afternoon, my friend. Hope you're enjoying the stream thus far. Captain Nice Guy with the 50 bomb donation, my friend. Too generous this afternoon, chat. I think most people are in favor of environmentally friendly standards, even politicians on both sides. It's why I want to see more successful electric truck technology come out sooner rather than later. No, we're not there yet, but we'll get there, and I personally agree with that. So
yeah, I agree with that too. I'm completely in favor for anything that helps save the environment, because it has been jeopardized. There's no arguing that. And I think electric trucks will be the future. And I think it's a good way to go if we can get the grids and everything to handle the capacity. But in the meantime, we're still going to need trucks until we get to that point that we can rely on the electric trucks. And we are not there yet, and we are not even close to there yet. We will get there. But in the meantime, you can't just throw out the baby with the bathwater. You've got to survive and continue to prosper until we can systematically change over to a cleaner system. And that's not this week. So, but yeah, Captain Nice Guy, completely agree.
This question is for Controlled Chaos or anyone else who's out of Texas. I heard you guys got a snowstorm there. When was it? Last week? Was it last week?
Brutal.
Is that all melted now, or how is that coming along down there? Because I know you guys had to shut down a lot of stuff. I'm just curious as to what the state is down there now.
The cat says, I left the big rig behind and moved to FedEx as a courier driver. Home every night, great work, great pay, great benefits. Best of all, I'm still driving around all day. Sounds like you made a good move, sir. Nothing wrong with that. It's all about quality of life. And if you can get more home time and still make good money, why not? Why not? Bonanza Transport says back a few years ago, Kentucky did not own one snowplow. I didn't know that. And I've been in Kentucky in snowstorms, and now that I think about it, I don't recall seeing any plows there either. Control Chaos says he hates Texas in winter. I just hate winter. But at least up here we've got the equipment to handle it. Because God knows we get a lot of it.
Travis says he still has he doesn't have any running water in his apartment because the pipe's bursting. Yikes.
Texas has been in serious trouble for like a week now. They had like a couple million people without power.
Yeah, I saw that.
A couple million.
I'm sure they saw that too.
With 3.5, 4 million people sleeping in their cars. It's a complete disaster.
Tim Field with the $5. Thank you very much for that. The best way to make diesel better, rather, be better with emissions and drivers with twin turbos for soot and water, methanol injections with nitrous oxide.
Tim, yep, thanks for the donation. I know they've experimented with a lot of different things. I know the earlier experiments with the twin turbos, they had problem managing that system because the second turbo often was starving for oil, and they had issues with them. But yeah, we've got to come up with better technology in the meantime. Like it's all right to mandate a certain emissions requirement, but you've got to have the motors that can practically meet those requirements and keep on going. I was reading something from a guy the other day that the DEF fluid kind of iced up in the injector nozzle and wouldn't spray on his exhaust, and it shut the truck down just because there was ice particles in his DEF fluid. And that's very common because that stuff is not, it will freeze. DEF fluid will freeze, and there are different qualities of DEF fluid apparently, but how do you know when you're buying what you're buying and how watered down it is? So and I'm surprised they don't put heaters in the DEF systems. Maybe sometimes now they do, but it's just, there are a whole lot of issues with it still. It's still going on.
I know Kathy already acknowledged this, but Michael Mueller, a grandmother and 2 kids died in a fire in the house, caught in fire rather, since they used their fireplace down in Texas, obviously.
Oh.
That's
tragic.
Yeah, I guess that's what happens when you're not combative for freak weather like that.
Igor says, I think people should have the right to run older trucks. A lot of people can't pay for a new emissions truck. Igor, most people can't pay for a new emissions truck. Everybody from single owner operators to farmers running their own trucks to get their grain to market, all of those guys, you can't afford equipment that doesn't run properly. It defeats the whole purpose. I completely agree with you, Igor. I don't know if they're as screwed up down there in Brazil as they are up here anymore. I tell you though.
Apparently there's no plows in Texas. They only use motor graders.
Yeah, the same things that grade the highways. That's all they've got. Wyoming has really been in financial troubles too. Controlled Chaos says that. And there's an awful lot of highway to keep clear in Wyoming. And Wyoming gets serious winter. So if Wyoming's a mess, that is not a good thing. That is a major transit state for east, west, and north-south traffic. So that's not a good sign. It's not a good sign. Wyoming used to do a really good job on that. I'm sorry to hear it slipping. Huh. And you know what else is interesting too in a lot of states and provinces is They're not running emissions engines in fire trucks and emergency equipment and heavy diesel engines that work to clean the highways. They've known enough to stay away from emissions engines for emergency vehicles. Yet they want everybody else to have one. Just, no. All our trucks at ERB have special heaters built into the DEF tanks on the trucks to help fight the DEF freezing. James, do you know, was that factory on those trucks, or did ERB install that? I think that's a very smart move, and I'd be curious to know if that came from the factory or whether ERB had the foresight to do that or not. ERB's a big trucking company up here in Ontario, and they know what it's like to truck in bad weather. So I'm not surprised they would make a move like that. Still, it's nice to see them smart enough to be doing it. So that's good to hear. So you won't be seeing any ERB trucks jammed up on the road anyway. Why doesn't the governor be aware that these new trucks are not reliable and hold the EPA accountable for making a product that doesn't operate right? And that's at Berkeley. That's a great question. But the governor controls the state, and the EPA is federally mandated. So there's only so much the governors can do. They can be frustrated as all hell. They can go to Washington, but it's the federal government that's mandating this stuff, not the states. The states bow to the federal government when it comes to anything like that. It's just the way it is. It's not right, but that's how it is. And old Preet says New York City puts snow plows on the front of their garbage trucks. Texas should try that. That's a good idea. Get dual purpose equipment. That's a good idea. It's better than nothing. It's better than not having any snow plows at all. And garbage trucks would be heavy enough to handle a plow too. That's a good idea. Ricky Rocket says government should help with the price. I'm assuming he's referring to the price of repairing and keeping emissions equipment running. And I agree. Or, and you're not going to get them to dole out cash, but at least slack off on the regulations and give the technology a chance to catch up through time to the point where we can run these things properly without breaking down. Like, ease off and give us a bit of a break. But it's one hand of the government not caring what the other hand does. It's just not their problem. They've done their job. They've mandated the Clean Air Act. Let the chips fall where they may. James says, as in reference to the ERB trucks, I think they spec the trucks from the factory like that. Smart move. And with the freezing point of DEF, it's pretty high. I think they should be putting those in just about all the trucks, unless you're never going to leave the state of Florida or something. I think they should be mandating that in all the trucks. It's just part of making them run properly, or better anyway. But it's been something else. And now the state of California, the leader in EPA mandates, is starving for trucks. What are the odds? There's irony. There's irony for you. SoCal Salmon says the next thing you know, the snowplows will be coming up to your house to pick up your garbage. Huh. If they're going by anyway to plow the street, they may as well. Why not? Huh. Kenneth says he's still having trouble hearing us. Trump signed an executive order in 2018 that said vehicle makers didn't have to meet California standards for all of the U.S. And about the very first thing that Biden did was throw that out. Yeah, you're right, though. That's Trump slacked off on the order because he understood it wasn't practical. And of course, the Democrats will do anything to undo what the Republicans have done. And that was one of the things they did, was put that right back. And here's the announcement from the EPA this week to prove that. So It's a shame. It's a shame they can't do anything productive. All they got to do is fight back and forth and not solve real issues. Fun fact, if China were to stop burning coal, which makes 85% of their power network, we would have a climate similar to the one we had 100 years ago. That is a fun fact, or a not so fun fact, that no matter how badly we clamp down on emissions here in North America, China's not clamping down, and they are the world's leading producer of air pollution because of all their coal-fired plants. They're not going to change any of that. The air is still going to be polluted anyway. Like it's goofy. Here in Canada, we produce something like 2% of the world's emissions, and we're going all green. But yet China, that produces 85% of the world's emissions, is doing nothing. So how are we going to win that battle? You know, not a whole lot of sense there. A 50-pound bag of pebbles always helped keep me from putting on my chains to get out of the icy dock. It controlled chaos. Yep. Or I used to carry kitty litter or salt and sandbags because I hated chaining. So if I could move the first 10 feet, I was usually all right. What's going to happen when the mega carriers don't want to buy new trucks and owner-operators choose not to buy trucks and all the freight will sit? That's from Berkeley, and that's right, Berkeley, and that's right, and that's what I'm hoping for. I'm hoping for the fact that the mega carriers get into such a squeeze, and the economy gets into such a squeeze, and the interstate commerce gets into such a squeeze that things start shutting down, and then they'll do something about this mistake that they've made, this huge mistake that they've made, and slack off. But you know, by the time the grocery shelves are empty, it may be too late to push something new through Congress, because God knows how long that'll take. But yeah, it's a mess. But that's, you know, generally governments only react when things are at their worst. So I don't think we've seen the worst of it yet. But it's interesting to see that it's starting in California, because truck drivers don't want to run. Out-of-state truck drivers don't want to run into California anymore. They can't afford to run into California anymore over these CARB mandates. And that's the beginning of it right then and there. And we need those containers that are backed up in LA and Long Beach. All those containers aren't just going into California. They're going right across the country. Everybody's going to need their stuff. So they better work on solving that problem pretty quickly.
Kyle answered your question about what ASE is, by the way. I don't know if you saw that.
No, I didn't. What is it? Mechanic. Oh, really? Yeah, you can't go wrong, especially with the trucks breaking down these days.
Daniel, thank you for another $2 donation there, my friend. How are the rules different in Canada versus the U.S.?
The emissions rules? It depends up here on province to province. Ontario has very strict emissions regulations for trucks. Quebec, the same, I believe. But again, out in the western provinces, not so much. You get out to the west coast, BC's fairly strict about it. But our prairie provinces aren't particularly strict about it, because those farmers need their trucks to run right so they can get their grain to market. So little less stringent out in the prairie provinces. Kind of the same as the States, pretty similar to the U.S. Our eastern seaboard, though, isn't as strict regulation-wise for emissions as in the northeast U.S., like Jersey and New York State.
Zach Brown, good to see you in the chat this afternoon, my friend. I had a comment here. Where did that go? Colin McKay. He says, hi, I'm going to trucking school on the 22nd of March. I'm doing an internship program, and there's a long list of companies that will take on new drivers. Do you think Midland would be a good choice?
I'm assuming he's talking about Midland up here in Canada. And if that is in fact the case, Midland is a good carrier, a well-respected carrier. And I wouldn't be afraid to work for them at all. Good choice. If it's the Midland that's up here.
Did you read what Kelly Patterson said, that the U.S. is 1% of the world's pollution?
No, I didn't read that. And you know, yeah, if you can find that, but the figures vary on that because we're told in Canada that we cause 2%, and we know the U.S. causes more than we do. But you know, you can't even get an accurate number out of them as to the figures. So it's like this COVID reporting. Everyone makes up their own numbers. Pardon me? Huh. Northwest Heavy Haul. It's funny this topic is coming up. I just had my DPF filter and harness fail here in Northeast Oregon. Don't feel bad, man. They're failing all over the place. The guy that I drive occasionally for now bought a brand new Freightliner with a brand new Cummins in it, and it's not a year old yet, and that thing has been in the shop more than it's been on the road. In fact, he's had it a year, and he's thinking about getting rid of it just because the truck's not making him any money. It's just always in the shop. And for us up here, the dealership shop is 60 miles away. So he's got to pay a guy to drive down there, pay a second guy to drive down, pick him up. They keep the truck for a week. They drive down, they pick up the truck, they bring it back. 2 days later, the dash is all lit up with problem lights again. He's just pulling his hair out. So everyone's having trouble with them. They're better than they used to be, believe it or not, which is just scary. But they're still not enough of a good truck that you'd want to invest a couple $100,000 in one. It's just crazy.
Victor, I got you. Can you eliminate the AGR and just run SCR? A rumor says SCR is doing more harm to the environment than good.
Well, what the rule is that whatever the factory installs for emissions equipment is that you can't touch it. Now, different engines like International use the SCR valve, but they were failing the emissions tests, so they got away from that. It damn near broke International. The rule is that you cannot tamper at all with the emissions equipment that's installed now from the factory. And different engine manufacturers use different techniques, but they're pretty much basically all the same now, where they're relying on this DEF fluid. So you just can't tamper with that at all. That's the rule. And all sorts of guys have bypassed it, and the trucks run great. But no more of that, according to the EPA. They're not interested in trucks that run great. They're interested in trucks that have an intact system. And, you know, I guess the logic is if they keep quitting all the time, they're not producing smoke. So maybe that's their idea, but it's devastated the trucking industry. Now, Victor says, can you answer my last question? I didn't see a last question from Victor. Here. Oh.
That would be the one that I just asked you.
Oh, yeah, eliminate the EGR. So, yeah, Victor, here's your answer to that. Sorry I missed it. The stuff rolls by pretty quickly here. Better think electric, become an electrician, from Ricky Rocket. I have big hopes for the electric trucks. I really do. It's going to take years, though, to establish a power grid. Like, sooner or later, you got to plug them in and recharge them. The recharge time is averaging 8 hours, and you're going to need a field full of these things to recharge these trucks every 500 miles to 600 miles or whatever they can do. It's just, you know, the infrastructure isn't set up to support electric trucks yet, and it won't be for years. So in the meantime, we still need the diesel engines, and we need them to work properly. SoCal Sandman, India and China are the world's worst polluters. Yeah, that's right. Exactly right. And neither one of them are doing anything about air pollution.
Daniel, thank you for your another $2. Make solar panel trailer powering the truck. Bit of a tongue twister, but
It is. Those solar panels aren't even all they've cracked up to be, because, well, look at Germany here in the last few weeks. They rely almost entirely on solar panels. They got so much snow, they couldn't keep the solar panels cleaned off, and Germany was importing electric power from other countries close to them, like Austria and Holland, because their own power system went down because all their solar panels were covered with snow. So yeah, a great system when the sun's shining and there's no snow, but they have their drawbacks as well.
James Milanese, I hope I'm saying that last name right, with the $50. My goodness, chat, you guys are far too generous this afternoon. Really appreciate that. Thank you so much, James. The mega carriers are going to continue to buy trucks with every new emission standard because they will just pass the cost onto the drivers by paying less, like always, and drivers aren't going to stop running because we can't afford to stop.
Well, there's the sad truth in a nutshell, James. Yeah, they'll continue to buy trucks. They have to. They're in the business of trucking, and they've got contracts to satisfy. So, yep, they'll try to push those trucks on the lease operators, as many as they can. And you're right. That may well be the effect on their company drivers, just to pay them less because they got to keep more back to repair their trucks. And that's a sad state of affairs. And there's another argument not to work for a mega carrier. And my advice these days, if you own a truck now already, like a whole lot of us do, just keep repairing it and stay out of California. And I'm just keep going until they stop you, because I just can't see investing $200,000 in a new truck these days. Not if it's not going to work properly. Why not make electric trucks like the giant mining trucks? They run off electric motors powered by a diesel generator that cuts the diesel in half. Michael Mueller, and my understanding is trains work on that same principle. And I don't understand why they don't do that. And perhaps it's because the whole thing has got to be so big and heavy that you couldn't scale a load with it. Because, like you look at engines, locomotives, and they have massive electric generators aboard. And maybe that's the problem. Maybe it's a weight and room issue. But even the mining trucks, I don't know why they can't improve on that technology, for instance. It's a good question. It's a good question. But apparently, I don't know why they're not focusing on that. There must be some issue with it anyway. Somebody would have thought of that. But. Us Americans need to stop buying made in China. They are the biggest threat to us because we are supporting their economy, or them economically. I agree. That's from Controlled Chaos. The United States was leaning on them under Trump. Now they've slacked off under Biden. But yeah, no, I completely agree with that. I don't know why we're boosting the economy of a country that's hurting us. But politics. Will the clearinghouse enable drivers to be paid more as there is not as many drivers? Well, Zach Brown, good question. And in theory, I would say yes, because there are fewer and fewer drivers out there. And the clearinghouse, God, they've eliminated something like 56,000 of them already. So your stock as a driver is up. You don't want to go to a mega carrier, although the mega carriers even are raising their rates because they're losing drivers. But yes, absolutely, it's going to improve driver wages because there's no choice. There's no choice. And they have to pass the cost. If they're going to pay the driver money, they've got to increase the rates on the freight and pass that on to the customers. And trucking companies purely hate going to their customers and asking for more money. And their customers purely hate paying more money. But at the end of the day, that is the solution to this whole thing. The carriers need to buckle up and go to their customers and get better money for the freight that they're moving. And they need to eliminate the load brokers and the middlemen and to take chunks out of the profit. And we've just got to get back to the way it was where a truck could load a good paying load and profit on every leg of the truck, and the driver could make enough money and everybody made enough money. The truck was well maintained and everybody was happy at the end of the day. This race to the bottom that the trucking industry has entered since deregulation has not been a good thing for us. And it's not been a good thing for the industry, and we need to start moving in the other direction. Good question, by the way. We like to rip on modern trucks, but at least there's no more 5x2 sleepers. I'm all pre. Yeah, there's the older trucks had some of their own issues. That's for sure. Some of those old girls were rough old girls. Boy, I can tell you they had this suspension that we called camelback suspension, and it was because it was arched like a camel's back. So when the weight hit it, the spring would bow down and then pop back up again. But oh my God, was it rough? I was, I remember running team in an old cab over Freightliner with Donnie Palmer driving, and every time we hit a bump, it would literally flip me out of the bed, like up in the air, like a pancake off a frying pan. It was just you couldn't sleep in them at all. It was terrible. All sorts of old time guys, and maybe myself included, have back injuries, and they can partly attribute them to those rough old girl trucks. So yeah, the new trucks aren't all that bad. I tell you, the suspension's been amazing. The improvements in that. Kenneth Snyder, what do I think about the $15 an hour? He's talking about minimum pay, what's it, minimum wage. I agree with it. Pardon me. I think that I can't believe that the average person working at Walmart can't afford to pay his bills. That's not right. I think wages, even the base wage, should keep up with the cost of living. We don't want to see in our country here people living on the streets and starving and having to work 3 jobs. It's just not right. And it never used to be that way, but it's getting that way more and more. And I agree that wages have to increase around the board, not just in trucking, but everywhere. People that work at Walmart or in grocery stores or whoever they are need to make better money. And it's the big corporations again starting to get bigger and bigger, more powerful, and the middle class is disappearing. And you just don't like the way that's going. It's not right. The big companies now are becoming robber barons, and you get these companies like Amazon, where the head of Amazon has more money than God, and yet his people are working. He's fighting because he doesn't want to pay minimum wage. Like there's just something innately wrong about that.
To be fair, only the bottom tier of jobs at Walmart are the ones that are actually making minimum wage, just to make that clear.
Yes, but still, people are stuck with those jobs because not everybody can progress in Walmart. They don't move everybody up. So
Starting pay at Walmart's from $13.
yeah,
What motor are you running, Dave?
what truck and motor am I running? I'm still running my old 475 Cat, although it's parked for the winter now. My old Peterbilt, my old 04 Peterbilt is under about 1.5 feet, 2 feet of snow right now. But I'll break it back out in the spring and go for a ride. I don't like to drive it around this time of year because all the salt up here just chews on the whole body of the truck and the frame. But you'll see it again in the spring. We'll be running it in the spring. Well, team, should we start to bow out here, do you think?
Give her a minute, take some random questions.
Okay. Michael Mueller says you could use an alternator with inverter to fast charge to keep the batteries charged on the electric truck. I think you'd need a hell of a system because those batteries are the size of a Chevy Vega. You know, those things are huge. So I don't know how fast, but you know, you'd think they could come up with some system like you're suggesting to trickle charge them as they drive. You know, maybe there is something like that. But I understand too that these batteries aren't your typical type of batteries. They're made with a different material. So maybe they don't like or they don't take a trickle charge. I know that Tesla right now is virtually shut down because they've been making all these claims about producing a truck that'll run 500 miles without a charge. And they've made these claims, and now they can't find a battery that will do that for these trucks. And there are issues. These batteries aren't performing the way they expected them to. So there's some delays in the electric truck field. I do see though that Nikola, for instance, feels now that they've got a hydrogen system, that will perhaps hit 900 miles before they need to refill it. So, you know, there are other avenues. We'll have to see how it goes. Let the engineers do their things. But yeah, I love old diesel trucks, but we should probably get away from them sooner or later here. But only if everybody else in the world's going to follow suit. There's no point in making America green when China's still black. But we'll see. We'll see how it goes.
Daniel, thank you for another $2. Thoughts on pickup trucks hauling car carriers?
I've seen a few of those, and I worry that the pickup trucks have the structure to properly haul and maneuver with that weight. I'm sure if you only put a few cars on and you kept the thing on dry roads, you'd probably be all right. But I worry about setups like that when I see them up north where they can get ice, and you wonder, you know, because the scale guys really don't look at those things. So you'll wonder if the pickup truck has adequate suspension to hold the load, and the tongue weight is rated for what's actually on the trailer top. You worry about, or at least I worry about setups like that. Setups like that aren't patrolled tend to go awry, and a lot of those guys apparently don't even need CDLs to run those things around there. These little hotshot trucks, and that's a mistake too, because those guys don't know how to tarp or strap down a load half the time. And the intention was, so in the old days, farmers with big dualies could move their equipment around. But now guys are taking those things interstate and trying to make a living off them using load boards and stuff. And I have a problem with that, and happily the DOT has a problem with that too. So, you know, I'm sure there's money to be made because your investment is less, but still you don't want to give away safety in return for money. The thing's got to be safe. So that's my concern. And too often safety is jeopardized or overlooked. And that's what I don't want to see with those hotshot guys.
Is it grilled mortal? Rifle right to the end.
Don't forget to put a couple of jugs of used motor oil down the stacks to stop the rust. Grilled mortal, I better tell you a story. I undersprayed my peat this fall before I put it away, and I had them spray down the stacks to prevent exactly what you're suggesting. And I had just put new bottom elbows on my stacks, and they're called a picket elbow. They're almost like an L-shaped elbow. They don't go kind of up on a 45. They drop straight down and go straight underneath the truck. And now I'm having trouble getting my elbows to clamp onto the upper pipes because they're greased with this formula to prevent the rust. So I talked to my friend Richard the other day, and he says what you do is put a pop rivet in between the two and hide it with the clamp to keep the elbows from sliding down. So I guess that'll be one of the first things I tackle in the spring. And I've taken off the elbows a few times and wiped them down, and so they wouldn't be greasy, and put them back up and reinstall the band clamps. But it's not holding. So I might have to use pop rivets or something to keep my elbows up in where they're supposed to be. But I'm trying to fight the rust problem here, but there are setbacks. Interesting you should mention that.
Just wanted to acknowledge 2 comments here. John Shukites, I believe that's how you say that last name. I apologize if it's not. I just thought this was an interesting comment. He wanted to thank us, first of all, for what we do. Of course, no problem. I don't comment, but I listen and learn. And I don't know, something about that comment just really kind of lingered with me. We appreciate everyone who does comment, but we find a lot of people, especially in our comment section on some of our videos, like past like the first couple of hours or so, some of the comments get a little bit wild. So we appreciate the people who take the time to listen. So that can be a little moral of the story lesson for everyone this afternoon. Take more time to listen. And what was the other comment I had here? Captain Nice Guy, I love Dave's stories. I need more of them. Ironic that you should say that, because we actually have stories for sale. And Dave, if you want to tell them where they can find that would be.
We do have an ebook available. It's in the link down. Audiobook.
Close enough.
And it's in the link down below, and they're a collection of about 4.5 to 5 hours of stories of things that myself and my friends experienced and went through. And
to the best of his recollection.
It's funny. I don't remember half the shippers, but I remember almost all the stories because you're just involved in it. I've got a really good story that I just remembered the other day too, and I'm dying to include it at the end of a video that we're going to do. It's one of my better ones, and I don't understand how I'd forgotten it all this time. And it doesn't even involve me. It involves a friend of mine, but I've still got some stories left that I haven't recorded on that audio book, so stay tuned. I like telling them.
So to summarize that 5-minute explanation, anyways, chat, we have a audio book you can go and purchase in the link down below. It'll be in the description. Make sure you go check that out if you haven't already. I saw Captain Nice Guy said that we should record a second audio book, so we'll have to kind of pass that around the table and see if we have enough content to release a second one, perhaps. Maybe do it a little bit different this time. Anyways, we are about out of time, boys and girls, for today. I'll take the time to wrap things up here now. You already told them about Friday's video, yeah?
I did.
Okay. In that case, I want to thank everyone who donated today. There was a lot of people, so I won't go all the way through the list, but you guys know who you were. Thank you to everyone who donated today. Vastly appreciate that. And thank you to everyone who came out and participated in the chat this afternoon. A couple of people are getting laughs out of my calling Dave's 5-minute explanation, calling him out rather on the 5-minute explanation. He rambles sometimes, and that's okay. He's allowed to at that age, I suppose. So
wow.
Whatever that is, it's in the upper hundreds. So I guess
35 is not that old.
It comes with the territory. Anyways, chat, I want to thank you all for coming out this afternoon. I was about to do the outro there. I forgot that's not my job. I'll pass it over to the man.
Well, you can announce the donators?
I did.
Listen, thank you everyone for joining us today. One parting shot, SoCal Sandman, heal up. We're looking forward to you being 100% again. Take care, everyone. Keep the rubber side down. We'll see you on the back haul. Have a safe night, everybody. Good night.